Right then, good afternoon. Welcome to part 2 of the Puffin. Today I'm going to try and tackle what we call the gait, which are on the Puffin is this little section here of his mouth. Because when a Puffin opens its mouth, it's like a hinge. You know, they're a little bit like, unlike most birds, general birds, you know, where the beak's just together and opens up. This has got a gait, which is here. And for that, we're going to use some colours I didn't put down, but you could use your some of the colours that I put down, which was Indian yellow. But I think we might need a bit of a brighter yellow. So actually, I've gone to lemon yellow and cadmium orange. So we've got the orange. You can use transparent orange as well. And then for the inner side here, where it gets a little bit, it's got like some pinky tones. I've added a touch of the permanent rose, or you could even add the Windsor red, just to get that sort of reddy orange. And then just round the outer section, so let me just pull this up a bit, sorry. So we've got the yellow round here, and then we've got this sort of orangey reddy colour here. And then we've got some dark sections underneath there and round there. So we're going to get those in. So as I say, this operates like a hinge, and that's why it can get so many fish in its mouth in one go. And this has got, it's like a skin type, and it's got little nodules on it. So we need to get those in. So the colours I've got here, if you look, that one's a bit, that'll probably be more like for the darker sections. This is more of the light section. So this is mostly lemon yellow and translucent orange. So I've used yellow, I've used the lemon yellow deep and some translucent orange. But you use any sort of yellow. You want a bright yellow and some orange in there, just to give it tone the yellow down a little bit. So if you've got lemon yellow, that's fine. Just add the orange in there. So we're going to start with the gait, and then we're going to go on to the beak. So I'm going to use, I'm going to start with my zero if I can. I'm going to take some clean water. I've mixed up the colour. So we've got the colours here. Whoops. So that one there, and that's got a little bit of the red in there as well. So with two colours mainly to start with. Okay, so some clean water. I've lifted some of the pencil marks off, so they're a little bit lighter, so I can still see, but I'm not going to be in danger of getting any of the graphite in, because especially when you're using a yellow, if the graphite goes in, then you do end up with you can end up with sort of a muddy colour, which is not what we want. So so that comes a little bit down there, and then that comes round here. So I'm just wetting the area, just make sure I don't over wet it. So damp my brush off a little bit. So you should be able to see. So just tilt your, if you need to, just tilt your picture so you can see that the water, so you can see the water is, it is wet. Let's tip it up a little bit. If you need to, just, I sometimes leave it a couple of seconds, and then what I do is I go back over it again just to make sure I've got the right amount of water on there. Okay, I don't want too much, and I always seem to put it in the middle and then pull it out towards the edges. So again, we don't end up with all the paint going to the edges and drying there. Okay, there. So I'm going to start with this, the more yellow colour. And what I'm doing is I'm tapping it just down the sort of central section of this of the gate, and then I'm just going to pull that colour towards the edges there. Okay, Just make sure you look at your reference photograph very clearly, because there's some of these sand eels coming out of the fish's mouth. Okay, so that's one bit there, and then there's some more there. This is another nodule, but we'll do that later in a different, we'll add some more darker colour. In fact, no, put the yellow over it first, that's better. Okay, so make sure we've got a nice coating of this yellow. Right, so we've got that there. Clean the brush, and this is some paper towel, or what I use mainly is I use one of these micro cloths, or you can use a cotton cloth and just take the excess water off and make sure there's none on the ferrule. Okay, so I'm finding that this 0 brush is just about right for this size. When we move on to the beak, I'll use a bigger brush because there's a bigger area to cover. Okie dokie, so let's look. Is there anything I need to check? No, that's about right. So, what I'm going to mix up while I'm waiting for that to dry. I'm going to mix up some dark, because we have got some quite dark areas. So I'm going to mix some blue, some of my blue and burnt sienna colour. So ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, probably a little bit more of the burnt sienna this time than the blue. Okay, so we can build that there, so we can build that up later. It's not too browny coloured, but when it mixes with this, the colours on here, it will probably look a little bit browner. Okie dokie, so now what I'm going to do is I've mixed up the yellow that I used, which was I've used a lemon yellow deep, I've used some of the translucent orange, and I've added just a touch of permanent rose just to make this sort of colour here. So I'm looking very carefully. I'm touching sort of this bottom side, because that's where this colour is. It's more towards the inner side of this gate, and round the bottom area as well. It's quite a lot darker. Okay, so just do that, clean my brush off, take the excess water off, and then just sort of make sure that it's in that area there. Okay, but that you've still got a bit of this yellow on the outer side. Okay, take some more water off, that's better. That's it. And then we're going to sort of layer up this layer and mark in the nodules as best we can. Okay, so let me add a little bit more of the permanent rose. So it's just making it sort of like it's a dark orange with a red tone in it, really, basically. Okay, so I'm just now carefully looking at the markings and sort of putting in these little nodules, or the skin, where the skin sort of wrinkles, a bit like wrinkly skin on. I've got some there, some there, some there. Okay, and then we've got some that come out on this outer edge as well, so okie dokie, just dry that off a bit. Let me just go back over that with a bit of a darker. That's it. Come comes around there. And then we've got a few smaller ones up there. Okay. You can just see that I've marked in, you know, some of the wrinkly bits. I might just introduce some more later on when it's sort of drying up a bit more. Okay. Okay, so clean that off. So now I need to add, I'm just going to sort of make, so that colours that I've mixed that with, I'm just going to mix a little bit of the blue with it. And it makes it a very dark red. And that's for this, the section, the nodule that sticks out just here. So if I sort of do that and that's it. So that is slightly darker. And then also where this colour is, the darker colour is showing. And then here we have got some very dark colours to come in there. Okay, so now just gonna the bluey brown mixture that I made with the ultramarine and the burnt sienna. So I've got a nice grey there, so more of a neutral grey. Just a little bit more of the burnt sienna than the... And then what I'm going to do is build up this little area here. So if you look on your reference photo, keep looking very closely at the reference photograph because it is quite dark. And then that up there, it comes up there. And then we've also got some dark here. And this is where the shadows form on the edge. Okay, but now what I need to do is really dry that brush off a little bit and then soften some of that in so that it's built up gradually and not just... And then also just put in some more of these little creases. Putting some little bits of shadow work in them. You don't actually see them so much down here because it's quite a lot darker. Okay. So, looking at this, so let's have a look. So that's the picture. Okay, so let's have a look. Let me just fold it so I can put it next to it and see what we've got there. Okay. So this area is just, I've just made it a little bit too big, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift... I'll just remove some of that colour there. That's it. Use a bit of tissue. Oh, this is good if you have done a little bit, you've gone over it a little bit, you can always, like that, and just pull the colour out. So I've got the colours all here in the palette, so what I could do is just re-establish. So that was the yellow. And then a little bit more of the darker colour in there. Okay, and then just tap that in slightly. Comes around there. Okay. and so it's a bit darker. And then if I need to, I can just build this up depending on, so I can keep coming back to this. So once I've got some of the fish in there, I might need to just darken this bit up a little bit more, but for now, yep, I'm looking at it and I might just put another glaze of the yellow just over that top bit there, and then also over the, so just putting a little bit of a glaze of the yellow there. And then I'm looking very carefully at this section, and it's just going to be, I'm just going to literally sort of very similar to the bottom colour, but it's just got that bit more, it's a bit redder, so I'll just pop that there. It's a bit redder down at the bottom as well. Okay. And then just again, I'm just going to re-establish some of these creases and putting some shadows in, especially towards the inner side of this gate there. Okay, so I'm just going to let that dry now, and then if I need to put anything else in it, like some more sort of lines down here, which there are a few I think, but you just can't see them so much. Do excuse me. That's it. So I'll leave that for now. And then I'm going to have a look at, let me just take some of this out. I think I've just gone a bit too far up. Looking at the reference. Just there. Just let me. Now, some colours are a lot easier to lift than others. So if you find a colour is quite hard to lift, one of the good things that you can get is what we call the magic sponge. Or another thing that you can do is you could, there is some lifting solution that you can get, and what you do is you put that on the paper before you start to use it. Put it in the areas where you're predominantly going to have hard colours to lift. So if you do make a mistake, you can lift it quite easily if you've put the lifting fluid on paper first and just let it dry. Or the other thing, like I say, you can use is called a magic sponge, which is something like this, and you can dab it. I don't particularly like using the magic sponge because it can, if you overwork it, it can actually damage the paper. So as most of you know, when I'm working these tutorials, I don't edit. I just do them, and then you know, what you get is what you see. So or what you see is what you get. So obviously I try my best not to make any mistakes, but not, you know, nobody's perfect, but it all adds to the experience. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to move on to the beak itself. So let's have a look at this beak. So if we have a look at the beak, so as you can see, we've got some yellowy tones here with just the hints of the orange, and then as it comes down here, you've got oranges and sort of reds as well. Okay, and then we've got some really dark sort of reds here, so we could just put a little bit of the blue into the red and just get it so it's like that colour. Okie dokie. So first of all, I'm looking at this yellow here. So there's a base layer which we can put over the whole beak really if we wanted to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that down here and here. I'm just going to do a base layer, and we're going to do a very pale lemon yellow with a little bit of translucent orange in it. Not much. I just need to take it away. I don't want the lemon yellow can be a little bit sharp. It's a cool yellow, but you know, it's got, if you look at that, it's got a feeling of warmth about it. So I'm doing a very weak mix of the initial colour we used on the gate, but I'm just adding a little bit more of the translucent orange, just so that we can get a yellow, but it's a warmer. It's got a feeling of warmth in it and not just a harsh yellow. Okay. Let me just wipe that off. So it's a very weak, you know, I've got a weak one there. So I'm going to turn to a number 2 brush for now, and we're going to start up here, put this base layer in there, and also fetch it down into this section here, and then just water it off a little bit so that when we do add another colour to it, it won't get in the way. So again, I put the water in the centre of the shape and then move it out towards the edges. Okay, and that's going to come down to there. Okay, and pull it up, and it sort of curls around the top of the beak here. So if you look, you know, you should draw that, make sure that's drawn in properly. So we've got the top of the beak there, and then it comes down this way a little bit. So what I'm doing here is I'm just feathering it off there. Okay, this bit is grey, and then we've got, hang on, I'm just gonna turn that bit round a little bit. Hang on, I'm just going to dry the water off this bit a little bit here, because I do need to remove some of that pencil. I think it's quite I don't really want that pencil there if we can help it. There we go. So I've removed the pencil, but I can still actually see the line just. Okay, so if you look there, I can still just see the line. So we've got that yellow sort of fading off there, and then it's going to come down here and round here till it hits this fish just there. Okay, and then that bit there. This bit is grey, so we don't wet that. And we pick up this very watery colour as a base layer and just pop that down so you can see how watery it is, and cover the whole. So I'll put it in the middle of the shape like we do with the water, and then pull it out towards the edges of where we're going. Okay, and carry it on. So it's got a light section down there, so make sure we've got some nice coverage there, and then fetch it down here onto this side as well. Okay, now we have got what we call not soft lines but hard lines here on the beak, so that's fine. But on here it's going to be a soft edge because it's going to be changing into another colour. So what I'm doing is I'm just literally putting a bit of water there and then let that dry. So when we put more water on to actually put the other colour in, it will blend in a lot better. Okay, so we've got this colour here now, so it should still be damp. So now what I'm doing is I'm getting some of this, the translucent orange. Again, fairly watery. I'd rather build it up slowly rather than too much colour initially. Okay, make sure I've got nothing on the ferrule, and then looking very carefully at this, at the reference photograph, I'm tapping it in, coming up this edge of the beak and round the top, just there, and then tapping it down here. So you can see, because it's still wet, you can see how it's putting in a softer edge there. Okay, and then We've got some of the orange here. It's a bit more of a harsher line, it's not quite as soft. Okay, and it goes up to about there, and then this will all change. But I don't want that quite as harsh as that just yet. So I'm just going to run a damp brush up there so it blends in nicely there. Okay, and then again I'm going to get a bit more of this, the orange. Okay, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change to my small brush again. So change to my 0, or even a 00. Let's try it with a 00, shall we? And then what I'm going to do is I'm coming down, tapping, so it's still wet. But I'm also going to put some little dots in, because if you look at it, it's got some little so I'm tapping this in as I'm coming down, as you can see there. So I don't want it to go too far in. Okay, right, so I'm going to let that dry for now, and then I'm going to put some of the other markings in there as well, so you can see them. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the bigger brush. So this time what I need to mix is, I need to mix, so we had that yellow that we had for the beak, and then I'm going to put in a little bit of the permanent rose. Okay. And let's have a look at the colour that I've mixed. No, it's too orange, so I need to put some of the red in it as well. Okay. Oops. So let me just try this colour at the side and fetch the reference photograph towards it, and then put my colour. So again, it just needs a little bit more of the red, I think. Not too much red, obviously. So let me try that one. Yeah, it's a little bit better. So I've used some of the red and permanent rose in it, but not too much. And then we have got some lighter areas of pink. So let's have a look. If we look on the reference photograph here, it's a little bit pinkier. Might be a little bit too pink actually there. Yeah, that's it. So I can just water that one down actually. If we water that down, you can see it's less harsh than that, so we've got that. And then also at the bottom we've got sort of a peachy colour, so it's got a little bit more orange in it as well than the red. So let me take some of that and put some of that in there. Yeah, so I've got like a peachy tone there, just there. So it's sort of an orange come red, and that, if you look at that, that's on the top of the beak here. Okay, so try and match your colours up as best you can to your reference photo. And as I say, if you haven't got the exact colours I've got, it's easy. You can see you've a yellow base with some orange and some pinks in it and pinky tone. So use your permanent rose, rose madder, or you could use opera rose. What else is the Scarlet Lake? Oh, Scarlet Lake's more red. And you know, just play with your colours, because that's part of your creativity that helps you create your own style. I mean, you know, I do watch other people's tutorials, and you know, I learn by looking at tutorials. But I found that if I was looking at any one particular person, you ended up painting in the same style. And that's not what art's about, really. It's about using your own creativity. So I started to understand a lot more about colour and the different paints and how they work together. And to me, that is a very good way of learning, because then you can develop your own style, which is far better than being known for copying other people's styles. So, you know, I've got several different styles that I use, depending on what I'm painting and how I'm feeling, to be honest. But I do like realism and I do like detail. So one of the most important things for me is getting the reference photograph drawing right, so the initial sketch right, and then also trying to match the colours correctly. And, you know, as over time, as you do more and more paintings or colour pencil work, whatever you're doing, understanding colour helps you to see colours that initially you wouldn't have seen in the painting. So I always encourage people to go back to some of their older paintings and repaint them, you know, a couple of years later on, after they've had more experience, and you will see big differences in it. And that's what being creative and learning is all about. Okay, so let's move on. So I'm just gonna now, I've got the orangier mix that we had for putting down here. And what I'm going to do is I'm looking at it, and the reference photograph on the edges, it's quite jagged and it's dotty. A bit like me, I suppose. So if you by tapping it and just putting in, because now it should be almost dry. So if you just put some dots in there, okay, you will create that sort of texture that you can see, because the underlying colour's dried out, so that's a little bit lighter. So it's going to give you some texture and some depth, which is what we need. And if you look at the reference photograph, it's a bit darker down here. So you can afford to put on a few more dots closer together. And that way you will create that bit of difference there. Okay, so we've got that bit of texture there. And then once that's dried, if you want to, you can actually soften up some of these edges here, just with a very damp brush, because it has got to move into that yellow section quite, you know, quite easily without any sort of jagged lines. Okay, so that's it, just a nice damp dry brush there, sort of, and pull that back down there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to just lift a bit of the colour there. Let me get the lifting brush, there we go. I'll get my eradicator brush here, because this bit here is quite light. Okay, I'm just eradicating some of the colour there. It's still got a hint, it's not pure white, it's still got a hint of colour. I just want to sort of line it off a bit at the top there. Okay, so you can see there we've got that colour. Right then, so now we need to sort of add a base layer on the rest of the beak. I'm going to leave this bit out here, which is pink, because it's quite a different tone. We've got a fish's head here, and then this bit is fairly straight. So I'm going to put some water in the centre, and I'm going to pull it out towards the edges, as I've done in previous. So you put it in the centre of the shape, and then just literally take it to the edges like that, and then up into where we filtered it away from the top. Okay, you need to load up a little bit more water. There we go. So you want this wet but not soaking wet. And then I'm leaving this pink section out here. Okie dokie, so I don't know if you can see that, but just move your, if you want to, just move your paper around so that you can see that it's nice and wet. And then if you pick up this warmer colour that we made, okay, it's quite, I'm only going to put a very thin layer on at first, so it's just slightly warmer. So the peachier colour is up at the top there, so you can put that in, pull it down, and then cover that bit there, okay. And then pull that up at the top there. There we go, okay. I'm just going to switch down to the zero brush and pick some of that darker orange that we had initially, and then just on this side here around that fish, and then just literally leaving a few broken lines just so it gives it a bit of texture rather than, and it disappears about there. So that's that colour, okay. So we've got the base, so we've got this lighter base down, we've got that there, and then also I need to, I'm just going to put a line here and soften it, because it does soften into that. If you look at this other section, I need it to soften into that, so just run a nice damp brush down that side and that side and pull it up just so that it softens in nicely. Okay, you can see we've got the yellow in there and the yellow there. So now I've got that, so I'm just going to darken up that peachy colour while it's still wet. I'm going to look where we've got these darker sections, put it on. I'm leaving a bit of an edge around here, and I'll show you why in a minute. And if we look carefully, just here it's slightly darker up this section as well. Okay, and around there, not quite to the edge, and then there, and then what I do is a brush, just dry it off so it's just a damp brush, and then what we do is we just soften that in to that edge there, so we've got a little bit more of a blend in the colours. Okay, and soften them edges in there. Okay. There. And then I'm now going to put on a bit more of a pinkier colour because it's getting a bit darker. So just here, there's a little bit of a triangle there, so I'll come up this edge here, and then this side is really a lot darker for some reason, so we'll just move that up there, and that goes right up there. Okay, so then dry it off again. So if you see, we're moving a little bit further down now, so then we just put a nice soft brush, blend that in. So in effect, you're ending up with a very light colour there, and it's just gradually, by the blending, it just gradually softens in, and we get these darker sections here. Now just there is, so let me get the eradicator. Just here is another section which was a little bit of a triangle which I've managed to go over, but there we go, I've just lifted it out just there. Can you see? It is going to be slightly different to that colour, but that's fine. Okay. And I just need it now, just that touch more red, so Let me get some of this red in there. It's quite a... There we go. It's like a pinky reddy warm colour. Right, so back to the bigger brush and look at the reference. So it's sort of got some very reddy tones up here. Peachy, pinky tones there. And then down here as well we've got some nice dark pinky tones and a few just there that need blending in. So then clean the brush, dry it off, back again and just use the edge where it's damp and then just nicely soften that off. So you're not adding any water to it, you're just actually just using your brush just to soften those edges in. Okay, and move them up there slightly. Okay, so it's still looking a bit, needs to be a bit redder here, pinky here, so I'm just going to literally put some more pinky colours in it there. Okay. While it's still damp, you can actually just keep working with it on the paper, but once the paper starts to lose its lustre, then obviously you're losing your colour from it, so that's fine. Okay, so now I want the pink that we said that was very watery, and I'm just going to add that in sort of here. That comes around that fish's head there. Pull it up in there, and also there's a little bit goes in there as well. And just add a bit of that pink, just here, just to here and there, just to. That's it. Okay. So if we now look at, if you can see it there, so if you look. So the colours, they might not look the same on screen, but when I'm looking at them, they are quite very, very similar. Oh, I'm just adding here just a touch more of the pink. So I've got the permanent rose here, so just to add in, so it does just look a little bit pinkier. Okay, dry it off and then soften it in. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull around the edge just to make sure we've still got, it's just looking, it's all blended, but it's now, you're getting that nice soft edge on the top. So you can see it's now pinky going into an orangey colour there, which is what we're looking for. Tidy this edge up here. Okay. And by looking at it, I can see, so let me just get this orangey colour. We've got some of the beak showing here through the fish and also on here, so there's a little triangle. So I'm not even going to wet this because it's just, and it's darker because obviously the fish, if you look, the fish are sort of putting a shadow over it. So this is the bottom edge of some of the beak that we can just see through some of it. I think that's about it. And then obviously again with some of the grey that we made, I'm just going to add a bit of it into this dark red, or the reddy colour that we got, make it into a, so it's gone into a purpley brown. And then I'm going to add that sort of here where we've got this darker sort of colour coming from the fish into the beak, and then that bit there is sort of dark as well, just there. Okay, but then also if we look at the reference photo very carefully, we've also got here, so coming up from this section here, I'm actually going to put, and it's a soft, it's it's a hard edge but a soft edge at the same time, and it gets very thin. So I'm just going to lift the brush. I'm hardly touching the paper, so it just fades off up there. Okay, and there's a bit thicker at the bottom there. Okay, so that's, and then just dry off the brush, and again just blend down there and there, and then also with the soft edge of the brush just go across there like that and pull that so it just disappears basically. Okay, and then just have another look at your reference photograph, see if there's any other bits. So there's a little bit of a ready line on the edge of that smaller triangle there, that colour there, it softens that off. Soften that bit off there, soften them off nicely, and then the pinky colour, just put some little sort of darker sections in there, and then just literally dry your brush off, and again just soften that bit in there so it's nice and soft. Okay, so we now have got the beak in. Let me just zoom back out again a little bit for you so you can see. Oops, no, out here, not in. So you can see now, you put the picture of the beak there. So if you look there, so we've got the yellow areas in here with the touch of orange and a bit of the warmth, because it does start to get warm. Yellow's quite a cool colour. I'll just put a little bit of warmth back in there. So let me brush dry it off and just rub that gently, blend that in so that yellow doesn't look quite as harsh. Okay, and then we've got these, so we've got a lighter, just a light, slightly lighter tone here on the top, across there, and then it comes down into a more pinky red or pinky orange there. There's just, let's have a look, we could just put a slightly pinkier touch. Let's have a look, it's got quite a dark section here. That's it. And then literally soften that off. There we go. There we go. So that's the puffin beak. I don't know if I could have made that just a little bit wider, but I don't think so. It comes down there. That's it. Okie dokie. Okay, so that's that bit, and then we've just got another bit of the beak, which is just here, which is a bluey grey. So it's very much like a Payne's grey. It's got some warm pinks in it here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do with that one is I'm going to mix up my grey and put more blue in than the burnt sienna. So I'll need my mixing brush. Where are you? Here. Okay. So for this I'm going to mix up burnt sienna and some ultramarine blue. Okay, and it's going to have more blue in than burnt sienna. So I'll just add a bit more water to that. So let's have a look at that on a piece of so it's not quite the same. So let me just mix up. Right, and I adjust the mix. So I can adjust it by adding more of the blue, ultramarine blue, or by adding more of the burnt sienna. So let's have a look at that one. See if that's a bit better. That's a little bit better. So let's have a look. See if I need to make any more adjustments to it. So there we go. So that one there is near enough what we're looking for. There we go. Okay, so I need a number 2 brush, I think, for this, because it's just one big area. Now, look at it carefully. So we've got, it's darker here, going more or less lighter there. So we're going to wet it. So I'm going to put a blob of water down here in the middle, work it round to the outside, and then I'm going to start by placing the paint here at the bottom, and then that's where most of the pigment will be, and then I can move it up and we can change the colour of it as we move up. Okay. Okay, so using my number 2 brush, get it nice. So I want it wet but without anything on the ferrule. And then I'm just going to literally put some water in the centre, so a couple of blobs on the brush. There we go. A few blobs there. So I don't want to over wet it, but I want to have enough water for it to... Okay, and then pull it around. And at the bottom here we've got some shapes because we've still got some of the fish in there. Okie dokie. Okay. Pull that around there. Make sure it's all nice and wet. So move your head or move the pad, and you should be able to see a nice glistening on the edge there, where the water's where the water is. So as long as you can see that and it's glistening, we can work with it. So then I get the grey. As I say, we start here. This is the darkest corner, so I'm just going to start here, tapping it gently, trying to make my edges as clean as I can, and pulling it up there, and pull it across here a little bit. Okay, and then literally pulling it up. So make sure I've got enough down here to make the colour as dark as I need down here. Okay, and then it goes in bits of the fish there. And then pull it around here a little bit, and then literally just take the paint off what I've got, and then just pull this paint up. And what will happen is you should get a nice smooth transition of colour from the darker bits into the top, which is very much lighter. Okay. So can you see how it's darker there and it fades up, but it's nice and smooth. We haven't got any jagged edges, or we don't put the dark and then another layer of light. You know, we've wet it. I put the darkest pigment, so I put most pigment on my brush down here. I'm just going to tidy these edges up now. And then what I've done is moved it across, and then I've gone to about there and thought, right, that's as far as I need to go. And then what I've done is I've just literally pulled it up. So if I think it still needs to go a bit darker, so I've pulled it up to there. Clean your brush, and then literally very light strokes, so you're hardly touching the paper, and what you're doing is you're just skimming the paint, pulling it up, but it's getting lighter because you've not got paint on your brush. You're just pulling little bits up and it's damp, so there you go, you've got a nice smooth. So if you look at that and then look at the reference, can you see we've got the darker bit of the paint down here, and then it goes up into the lighter area. Okay, so while that's drying, I just want to make sure I've got some nice, I'm going to use, I'm looking at it and I think I'm going to use a bit of a crimson. Looks more of a crimson-y red. It's a cool red. Yeah, I'm just going to mix up a little bit of crimson to put on top of the grey. But I want it to start to dry a little bit first. Okay. I'm just having a look now and a check round if anything else needs sort of looking at. So if there's things I'm not quite happy with, I'm making sure I double check the eye. Okay, so I'm just going to check that. Yep, that's fine. Right, yep. That's fine. So we've got the eye, we've got the gait in, and we've got the bill in now. So we're just letting that dry a little bit. I'm going to say I made a mistake by leaving the pencil line in there. Really, I should have removed that before we did it. So I'm just going to wait for that to thoroughly dry. Then I will try it. Once you put colour on top of it, it's quite hard to remove the pencil mark. So usually I do move them as we go along and try and take the colours out. And I wished I had there, but I haven't. Okie dokie. So the next thing I want to work on is I want to try and get some of this done, some of this white area, and then I can tackle some of the fish. So for that, I'm looking at it, and we've got areas here of, if we look closely at it, we've got some sort of this colour here, which is reflecting from its bill and its eye. So we've got some sort of greys, but they've sort of got a reddy tinge colour to them, and then we've got some more greys here, and then down at the bottom we've got sort of greys here. But again, if you look very closely at the reference, if you look at it, it's got a peachy, so it's a warm browny colour. So it's a warm, they've got some warm colours, and then the majority of this can be left white, so we'll leave that the paper white. Okay, so I just need to put a base layer on, and then we can work some of the markings on top. So for the base layer, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up, I'm just going to mix up a very pale, let's have a look. I'll put some burnt sienna with some of the lemon yellow. So I've got lemon yellow and some burnt sienna. Okay. And just a little touch of the red, and then I've got, that's the colour I've actually got, which is not going to look right at all. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to lighten that, water that right down. So I'm going to add quite a few bits of water to that, because the lighter it is, I'm going to see now what it looks like on a scrap bit of paper. So let's have a look here. We've got my scrap bit of paper here. And don't forget, watercolour does dry lighter, so that's going to dry quite light. Okay, so just add another touch of water to it, just so I know it's lighter. Okay, so it's only a base layer. So I'm going to use, for this one, I'm going to actually use a size 4. Use some clean water. So what I'm going to do is, most of this colour is going to be concentrated on this side and leaving most of this side pretty clear. So I'm keeping to look closely at my reference photo. So under the chin we have got some darker colour, so I'm filling it all in, but I'm not going to put any colour up here. So the colour will disperse and become sort of very, bit like what we did that little okay, so I'm starting down here. So you can see now the colour is very, very, very light. So I'm just looking where I can see a touch of colour in the grey and in the top of the head of the bird, and I'm just going over into this darker area here and just over at the edges here. Okay, I'm going in the direction of which of what the way the downy feathers of the bird are going, just so we keep it in line. So it starts to fade off here into the white. Okay, so I'm not touching too much there. And then we've got some of this colour here around the top and down this side. Okay, again it can go over where this darker area is going to be. Then I'm just going to clear the brush, and then I'm just going to soften these edges off here. So I've left, this is the paper white. I mean, it's wet, but there's no paint on it. And then this colour here, where I have put a bit of colour, you can see the colour, but when it dries, you'll see how it fades. That's white, and then that's got the colour there. But it's a very smooth transition, so you're not going to get... So that's and it's just the base layer. And then we can work on top and put the bits of detail of the feather of the puffin on top. Okay. Now, also I've looked, and at the top here of his head, so I'm just going to wet this section here. At the top of his head, he's got some of this really light colour as well. So I'm just going to drop a little bit of that in there. Okay, just to give it a bit of a base layer. Okay, and around the back here, so we can pull it in. Okay, there. So we've got the base layers in for the white area of his cheeks and his around his face. And then this is going to be dark, and then we've got some whiter areas down here. So what we could do while we're doing this, we could just again wet this, and then let me rub out some of these marks because they look a bit very pencil marky, so they could actually, the graphite could get into the paint, which we don't want. Okay, so I'm looking at where this white goes up to, and it comes down here. Again, I can go into where some of the darker areas start, because we've got bits of light and dark. Patch it down here. Now, I've noticed I've got some of this blue from the background here, so what I'm going to do, I'll try and get some of this out if I can. Now, what I might do is use a magic sponge just for this little section here. Get most of it out. So it's damp, so you dampen the sponge. There we go. So that's got quite a bit of that blue out, so it's not going to be that noticeable. Okay, so I've wet that section, and then with the colour that I've got, then it's all gone. So I've got the same base layer on here as I have on there. Okay, now I'm going to leave some of it white, so I'm not going to put it everywhere. I'm just going to put it more or less around where the dark feathers meet the light feathers. That's the most predominant area of change of colour, so I'm just going to put it there, and then soften all this out into the white or the paper, and then just leave that. Okay, so if you look, we've got the colour there, and then I've just softened it away, so this is paper colour, same as up here. Now you're starting to see the difference. There's a slight colour there, and that's basically white, the paper. There's no paint on it, so I'm going to leave it there for now, and then we're going to come back, and when we come back we're going to look at the face, rest of the face here, and this sort of fur down here, the feathering down here. And then I'm going to show you a couple of the fish. Once I've shown you a couple of the fish, you can do the rest of them yourself. We don't need to do all of them. But we'll have a go then at the fish. And it's about looking at the fish. When you look at the fish, it's about looking at where the darkest colours are and then pulling them into the lighter colours. We've also got some greens in here. We've got blues, bits of orange, some more greens, greys. So there's lots of different colours in there, and they are all blended quite softly. So I'll show you a couple of the fish, and then the rest of them you can sort of do for yourself. Okay, so that's it for this video, and then we will continue on the last video, and hopefully just probably do one more video, and it should be completed. Okay, so I'm just going to let that dry, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you very much.